Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Manufacturing Tomorrow's Workforce. We have another great pod in store for you today, and we're welcoming back Christine LaFave-Graves, Managing Editor of Putnam Media's Plant Services magazine, and she is joined by Keith Barr, CEO and President of Leading to Lean, a company which works to improve manufacturing operations through digital transformation via software solutions. Here's their interview.
The U.S. manufacturing industry has been riding high by more than a few measures on a wave of job growth, technological innovations creating new roles and new efficiencies in industry, and public-private partnerships helping to shore up vital skills training. The sector is robust enough, in fact, that last year a study by Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute found that U.S. manufacturers could face a shortfall of 2.4 million workers by 2028. But that's a story, it seems, that hasn't reached most Americans. I'm talking today with Keith Barr, President and CEO of Leading to Lean, a northern Nevada-based company offering software tools designed to help manufacturers better manage their shop floor processes. Leading to Lean recently conducted its first ever manufacturing index, which looked at perceptions and largely misperceptions about the U.S. manufacturing industry today. Keith, thanks so much for joining us today.
Christine, thanks very much for having me. This is an important issue for us, and I'm hoping we can share some insights that are valuable to your audience.
Yeah. We hear that U.S. manufacturers are having a tough time attracting workers, and attracting younger workers in particular. What do you think, based on your survey, are some of the biggest factors contributing to this?
Well, I think the demand in the manufacturing industry for workforce is increasing because of the number of retiring workers, and so it's added to the problem. But I think the problem has been more the perception and the way that the younger workforce looks at manufacturing as an industry. And I think our survey found some interesting things that indicate that we have some work to do to both educate the younger generation in the kind of opportunity that exists, and also help them understand really what manufacturing's challenges and opportunities are, because it's a different workplace than I think most people perceive.
Yeah, absolutely. The disparity of some of the numbers from your research, you found, for example, that 75% of the thousands or so people surveyed believe that having a strong manufacturing sector is important to help grow the U.S. economy. But more than half of millennials, for example, believe that robots, AI, and machines are going to replace all manufacturing jobs in the U.S. What were some of the other figures that stuck out to you from your findings, and how do you really combat some of these misperceptions?
Well, I think clearly the survey showed that next generation workforce really didn't see manufacturing as a career opportunity. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth, because we have a very evolving and technical environment that exists. And while more robotics and more artificial intelligence is being put in place in manufacturing shop floors, the requirement for a highly technical and even computer-skilled individuals is greater than it's ever been. These machines require programming. There's problem-solving tasks that require sophisticated technical skills that I think would be very appealing to the next generation workforce. But I think they're just unaware that they exist, or have a perception that it's the assembly line that doesn't require a lot of aptitude or skill. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Yeah. Real opportunity exists.
So what's needed to get that part of the story out, to let young people especially know that these high-tech, really innovation-focused opportunities in manufacturing are out there? What are the tools to get that story out there, and who is involved in getting that story out there?
Well, I think obviously the manufacturers themselves play a major role, and probably a pivotal role in how the rest of the world perceives manufacturing. And it starts with the workforce they have today. When my dad told me I should be anything but a diesel mechanic because he was a diesel mechanic, that was sort of suggesting that he thought there was a better life for me, right? And I think today a lot of manufacturing employees are going home and they're suggesting that there are other career paths for their children. And I think that's because they feel the culture and the environment hasn't been conducive to wanting them to promote that to their own families. And that's changing. And I think it's changed significantly due to the cultural change that's occurring on the plant floor. And manufacturers really have control over that by deploying the right kinds of technology. I also think manufacturers have a key role in how the public perceives the work on the plant floor. And there's some great examples in the industry I think that they could leverage to position not just their brand, which I think is the focus of most marketing activities, but also focus on why the next generation workforce would find real value there.
Okay. So what are some of those examples? What are the top ones that come to mind for you?
Well, I spent a significant amount of time working in the U.S. military as active duty military, and if you look today, the Army, Navy, Marines, they have very prominent ads that they run that illustrate the technical challenges and the kind of mentality that's required in today's military. And I think manufacturers can use that example in a very big way. I think they could deploy similar things around the kinds of challenges and the kind of opportunity and the sort of skill set and mentality that's required to help people, help the public in general understand more about the level of opportunity that exists and the kind of careers that can exist there. The military saw some great success and obviously has to appeal to young people. And so I think there's a great way to mirror that message, but it's going to have to come from the manufacturers. It's not going to be something that gets publicly funded, I think. It's got to come from the manufacturers, and as they're positioning their brand, they can certainly carry that message. So it's going to require some coordination and some conscious effort, I think, to align around a message that can resonate repeatedly. That
is a great point to turn to the military as an expert in reaching out to young people in particular, though. And given that so many people in manufacturing industry have a military background, it's really interesting to leverage those connections. You mentioned about your dad and what he said to you. I frankly heard the same thing. I was at a plant in Iowa a couple of years ago and was talking with a woman on the production floor, and she said that her dad pretty much said the same thing. It's like, I've been doing this for 30 years. I just want you to do anything else. And she was happy in her job, and she was looking to move up, but that weighed on her mind, I think, in the back of her head, that is there something else I should be doing instead? For young people in more rural areas, out in Iowa or something, what do you think are some practical kind of on the floor, on the ground activities that manufacturers can get involved in to carry their message out? Is it a matter of going into the high schools or community colleges? What are some suggestions or ideas you'd offer?
Yeah, I definitely think that's another opportunity, and I believe a lot of manufacturers are doing that today. That example I gave of my dad, interesting enough, the flip side of that is he took me to a manufacturing plant for a farm implement company that his company or who he worked for was promoting and reselling. And when he took me to that plant, I was hooked. Just the opportunity to see the automation and the way that these machines were being built in the factory, was really interesting to me. And so I do think, and I've been on a few field trips as a child as well to different manufacturing plants. And so I've spent my whole life wanting to work in manufacturing because of the exposure I had at that early age. So I think those things can help a lot. I think the sponsorships at the education, certainly STEM programs and the kinds of things that we can do with community college to develop skilled trades and drive that awareness, as well as scholarship programs. Lean to Lean as a company feels like this is a very important issue, so we actually established a scholarship fund that we make available to our customers' employees to try to generate interest and get more people involved in taking that career path towards some form of skilled trade.
That's great, and really demonstrating, putting skin in the game. Excellent. And again, there's nothing like seeing it all in action, right? Getting out on the plant floor, and it's one thing to read about it or to have somebody come into your school and tell you all these cool opportunities, but to see it in action, what a powerful impression that makes.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think I mentioned earlier too that the current workforce needs to take that message home. And the way that can occur is by creating leveraging current technology and the kinds of things that we're doing to drive more engagement and empowerment of the workforce itself. And it's done through technology. We have a unique technology platform that's providing information, and the focus on the workforce themselves. And so arming them with information in the task and, the ability to influence their own work area to drive their own improvements can change the culture and the perception that people have in a big way. So if that culture is strong in that organization and they feel like they're making a difference every day in their lives, they take that message home to their families. And now their children see the kind of passion that their parents have towards the career that they've pursued. And that there's nothing that's going to move them to that career path faster, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. What other findings, were there other discoveries from your first ever manufacturing index that stuck out to you?
Well, I think the perception, you mentioned automation a little bit, but I think we certainly see a significant amount of press over the last year and 2 years around offshoring. And I think if the perception is that these jobs are all going offshore, we have to change that because they certainly aren't. I mean, the number of workers required, here in this country alone is just staggering. You mentioned earlier in the survey that Deloitte did, and we have to change the perception that, these are temporary or they're not going to last, because they're going offshore, they're being replaced with automation. The reality is there's a significant amount of growth, and everything we touch, use, or consume is manufactured someplace. And I think that came out in the survey as well, that I think people don't realize how dependent we are on manufacturing in every part of our lives. And it is going to be a significant challenge for us in the future if we can't get a good replacement workforce, because change and improvement only comes from people. And so we need people that have the technical skills to define the new pattern and the new methods that these manufacturing plants are going to use to become more effective or more efficient and to be globally competitive. So there's a great opportunity here, but I think when people don't understand the impact of manufacturing, they don't realize, that there's as much of an opportunity there either. So there's a little bit of awareness that we could do there.
And that's really interesting to think about. Everything that you touch, everything you use was manufactured somewhere. There's a lot of interest among kids who want to take stuff apart and put it back together, and those who are involved in STEM and robotics programs and everything. There's something to be said for getting your hands dirty and making something. Is that something that you think could provide even a compelling argument for opportunities in manufacturing versus just going off and being an app developer? We hear that sometimes, that that's a challenge manufacturing.
Well, yeah, definitely, because it is creating automation, and it is creating intelligence. And I think the perception that AI and in the millennials, we saw a significant perception that artificial intelligence would replace a lot of jobs. And I think it will replace some elements, more repetitive things that probably aren't really challenging to the human brain, but certainly not on the scale that we require change to be implemented or innovation to occur. And those are the things that have to come from people. And we're quite a few years away. I mean, probably another 20 or 30 years away from artificial intelligence really being able to create intelligence. I've been around a long time, and through the U.S. military, we had some very sophisticated programs and investments that we were making to try to create artificial intelligence around weapon systems. But those things even aren't a reality today because it's such an elusive and a challenge. So we need people to invent, and we need people who have creative minds, and we need people to innovate in order to drive new automation and new changes within manufacturing.
Yeah. It's an exciting future to be a part of, certainly.
Yeah, it is. I think it's much more interesting than people realize, and as you said earlier, we have to find ways to expose people. So I think manufacturers can take the lead in the way they're messaging and branding themselves today to include that message, around the types of skills and the minds that we need to be part of this. And I think the culture change that they can do on the plant floor can send a different message home every day, which I think is also possible. And it'll take a number of things and a significant amount of work over the next, for our future, indefinite future, for that matter.
Right. Well, great ideas and great practical suggestions, Keith. Thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for the great work that you're doing with the survey, and we'll look forward to learning more from Leading to Lean.
Thanks very much, and thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you, Christine. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you to our audience. I'm Christine Lefebvre-Grace, Managing Editor of Plant Services for Manufacturing Tomorrow's Workforce. Have a great rest of your day.
And that was Christine's interview with Keith Barr of Leading to Lean. Be sure to check the show notes for links to additional materials you might find interesting. And don't forget to subscribe to Manufacturing Tomorrow's Workforce so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks for listening.